Hey guys, MetricMotorcycleMadness here. Today we're working on the VT1100C2. This is the 97. Having problems with this one, and that's the handlebar grip for the throttle end. And you can see this just, I could just pull this off easily. Absolutely no effort. This was spinning independently of that. And that's because there's supposed to be a sticky element inside of this, gripping this to the throttle. I can't remember what you want to call this. Anyways, you know what this is. But that was not attached to there. See, there's threads at the end of this, and what that is for is the original stock grips. And stock grips actually have a threaded cap on the end in addition, so they won't pull off without removing that cap. On these aftermarket ones, these are just held on by stickiness of this throttle grip glue, I guess you want to call it. But it is worn off, so this pulls off. I'd prefer to just have the stock ones, and that's because they're more secure and they're not going to do this over the years. You can see someone's just electrical taped this, tried to get it back on, so that's going to need to be removed and fixed. The other thing we're doing is the throttle cables. You can see the housing, those are pretty rusty, they're kind of bent. The throttle has okay response, it comes back down, but the throttle is sticky and it does not snap back like it should. And it is not going to pass inspection that way. So one of the first things we're going to need to do is loosen the throttle cables on the carburetor and loosen them up there and probably the housing. But first thing you definitely want to do is take the grip off. You're going to have to take that off because this throttle piece sits inside the housing and the housing needs to come apart. I suppose you could leave the grip on if you wanted, but it would just make it easier to get to everything. I'll leave that up to you. So anyways, we're going to pull the new cables out of the bag, and before we take anything off, we're going to just check them and measure them and make sure hopefully they're close and the threads are the same that we need. Same as you would do with a clutch cable or brake line. Some people are going to tell you to remove your gas tank, depending on the bike. We may not need to for this one, we'll see. But this is the left side of the bike, and the carburetor is up here. And you can see, this is where the push and the pull cable are attached. One cable here, and then there's one up here. Right there is where the pins sit in. And then they wrap around this. And when you move the throttle, then the throttle comes up into here. So if you look farther up, there's two attachment points. One here, and then there's one here where the lock nuts sit, where they attach. So yeah, I think we're probably gonna have to take the tank off because those nuts are really hard to reach and thread while they're underneath there. So rather than spend all day trying to move that, we'll just take the tank off. So your seat's gonna have to come off. I can't tell you how to take it off because I have an aftermarket. It just is one bolt like a Harley seat. But take your tank off. There's underneath the seat, there's one bolt here and there's one up there. Before you do that, you're gonna have to pull your fuel line off. You're gonna have to drain your fuel, and then you'll be set to take the tank off, provided you don't have any kind of wiring attached to it. Grab a funnel and a 5-gallon can to drain your fuel into. With draining your fuel on this one, we're going to have to run the funnel right underneath here because this is where I'm just going to remove the fuel line. On other bikes, if you're lucky, you'll have an inline fuel filter junction, and you just take it off at the junction, and then you have a little bit of a line to pull out. But it's easier to do from here rather than going underneath the bike to where the fuel filter is and trying to get that stupid thing out of there. which we also need to do a video and replace that as well. So anyways, I'm going to remove my seat. You're going to remove yours. If it's yours, you'll probably have 2 bolts up underneath here and then maybe 1 on the back. Then we'll remove the tank after we drain the fuel here. So after you've removed the seat, go ahead and put some glovies on. Grab your fuel can. Grab some paper towels. We're going to put some paper towels underneath where the fuel line is going to come off, and that's because regardless if the petcock is good or not, you're still going to get a bit of fuel leakage, and we don't want to get it all over everything. Me, I don't care about this bike in particular because it's my own. If I'm working on a customer's bike, I'm going to put paper towels down, I'm going to put towels down, rags, the whole 9 yards. You don't want it getting all over paint or all over chrome. But I'm just going to do a 30-second job here. So we've got a fuel clamp, so we got to remove the fuel clamp and then get the line off of there, and then quickly get this funnel underneath where the drain spout is. Alright, so fuel clamp is going to come off. I should get it from here. Some bike, I prefer these style because you can get them nice and tight. Other people are simply just going to have the normal stock ones, which will just require a set of needle nose pliers to clamp down and remove. I'm just going to reuse this again, so I'm just going to push that down out of my way. Now you may need a flathead screwdriver to pry that out. Sometimes you can get it by hand. And it's starting by hand, so we should be good. Now I'm not going to have this on camera, I'm going to get fuel all over the camera, but basically that's going to pop off, get this up and underneath, and you're going to have it drain into your fuel can. And once you get the funnel in there, make sure to turn this to on. This is set to off right now. And also helps to open up the gas cap. So if you don't want to make a mess, a better way is to quickly pop the fuel line that's off and grab an old fuel line and just pop the old one on and right into that. That way you have just about no mess. So funnels do make a mess, but that's a way you can do it if you don't have an old piece of fuel line. Sure, once you drain your regular tank, to flip it to reserve, and you drain the reserve fuel out so it fully drains the tank before you go and move it. Do that. It might be worth, after everything's drained, take a rubber glove or something rubber, put it over the petcock, and just zip tie or tape it on, so if you're going to move it, you don't splash fuel all over the ground if there's extra sitting in there. If you're going to set it somewhere that's not outside, like you're in a garage, you don't want to spill it on a nice floor or something like that. So while that's draining, we can at least remove the bottom bolt. This one's going to be a 12mm on that. Top one's going to be much smaller, probably a 6 or 8mm. Let's see. Our fuels. Alright, so our regular fuel's drained, so we're going to go to reserve now. You'll see we got plenty of fuel in reserve still. And if you need to do any other work underneath your tank, now's a good time as well. I need to hide some wires from the speaker system. And just a quick note, I pulled that bolt out of there, and that was clearly not the right threads, whoever put that in before. Looked like the threads were about to strip out, so that may not be a 12mm head, just be aware. Good idea to check the rubber piece underneath, make sure that's all intact. So once the fuel drains out, before we remove the top bolt, go over and you see this line, just a little hose clamp that goes up underneath here, and that's a breather. So you just need to remove that breather hose if you don't want to yank it off of there. As you can see, it goes through on this end and down. So yeah, you don't want to rip that. Alright, so top one's going to be an 8mm on that. I think that one is correct. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull the tank off. Alright, tank is off now. Go ahead and cap our fuel for right now. Reuse that later. Now you have access to the carburetor a little bit better. So now we can see, well, I'll get in here, but both of the cables as they come down. And you can see they're passing up underneath here. And they go through and underneath the a lot of the electrical work. As you can see, they come around here. Get around underneath the radiator caps. And then they go through that kind of tree design. So make sure to note that the routing of that before you take it off, so you know where it goes back to, because these only go a certain length. Alright, so next step is going to be to unbolt the holes from the carburetor and try to figure out what size that is. That looks like less than a 10mm. Maybe it is a 10mm. We'll see. You may need to push some of these other cables up out of the way. This looks like maybe a decompression cable, and that's going to have to be pushed up and out of its housing. So go ahead and find the right size for these nuts up here. Right there. So all you need to do is loosen this top nut here. That's the locking nut. And then start loosening the bottom one out, so that will drop off. What else was I gonna say here? So I'm gonna do one cable removed from here first, because I want to unsnake the first cable up and out and make sure that I label them so the correct push and pull goes back to the correct side. So you don't want the cables crossed. So this was a 10mm, so you're gonna really need two 10mm wrenches possibly, but if you didn't have that, you might be able to use a 7/16. Alright, so we're gonna pull that up and out now. This is gonna have to move a bit for you to be able to pull the cable also. You'll have to twist this, which you may have to loosen the top one first too. I'm not sure, we'll see. Also important, before you go too far, take a picture and note of exactly how the cables looked before, because you're going to tighten the nuts down exactly how they were before. So that way you don't have to sit there and wonder adjust them. Alright, so this one came out okay. We didn't even have to move that. All you got to do is remove it from the little bracket it sits in, and then you can see as the back of that has a little hook where the wire comes in. Just got to move the wire up so it can pass through there, and then wiggle this little pull out. Now we're going to snake this up and out so we can see which one. So the one that sat on the bottom of the carburetor, the bottom end, or at least I should say the bottom end of the carburetor, but that hooks on below is what hooks into the top of the housing here. So note that. Reason we're replacing these, the bottom ends of the cables actually look okay. Problem is that these are rusty, they're getting bent, and parts like in here, the housing that comes out of here is supposed to be straight is broken, and they're getting kind of hung up. It's moving around too much. So I believe this is the pull cable and not the push, but I could be wrong, because I feel like I can pull this like you're gonna give it gas, and I think that's moving. So now we're gonna now that we know that, we're gonna do the other one. Remove this. This one may be a little bit more tricky. because there is tension held on this. So you should be able to get that out of there all right. Just note where it is. Top one, this top one for sure is the one you're gonna have to have 2 wrenches. I have to have it on the top locking, and then go to the bottom nut to loosen it, because you don't want to bend this this bracket here that holds it on, which bends very easily and can either snap off, or the screws can get stripped on it if you have to remove it. So good idea to spray it with some penetrating oil if it's kind of stuck on there, which we're going to do. And then do the same thing as before. Once that's out of there, you can just pull this up and out, the little nub from the cable. So now that your bottom one is removed, or sorry, your top off the carburetor goes to the bottom of the housing. Pull this up and out. And again, the ends of these look okay. It's here that we're worried about. These are both snapped off. So, alright, now from here, here's where it kind of gets a little tricky. And I'm going to guess that even with penetrating oil, these, you have to grab the pliers, are going to be rusted in there. So, we're going to take the housing off apart first and see if we can, I don't know, maybe get these off still. But I'm guessing we're going to have to put the housing back together and have it clamped onto the handlebars to be able to reef these nuts off, because they're so on there. And it's going to give it extra stability, and some way you don't have to hold the housing to unscrew and loosen those. Maybe we'll just try to loosen the nuts a little bit first, and then we'll take the housing off. But if you don't have rust problems, you may not have to do this part. You should be able to just take the housing apart and unscrew these. So to remove those, a nice pair of pliers with a gripping surface on it, or better yet, a set of vice grips, something that you can hold a good grip on. I think we're going to remove that mirror because it's kind of in the path of where I want to tighten and loosen. So you're going to have to find a fairly large wrench to fit around there. Let's see what size this is. So that's a 17 millimeter. And that is perfect. So that's a 17 millimeter to loosen this mirror here in the housing. So just going to loosen it, move it up and out of the way. So definitely move the mirror up and out of the way like this. So you got plenty of room to get in there. Penetrating oil first, and keep this in the housing, because that was top one was on there really good. And the bottom one looks even worse. So I'm going to have to play around with the bottom one a little bit. And then we'll take the housing apart now that those are loose. Alright, so that is now loose on both of those. Now, whoever put this back together, I don't know if these are the right size screws, but you can see this is not lined up correctly. That means that someone either tightened down this end too much or didn't use the right screw size, because you shouldn't have that much of a gap only on one end. Unless for some reason it was getting bunged up over here, and that's why they kept it loose. So see if we can fix that. So to get in there, it just looks like some there's 2 different screws. There's one on each end, one here and one on the other end, and they look to me like Phillips. They also look to me like they might be stripped out, because some dum-dum went in there and reefed on them and didn't try oil first or anything like that. So if yours look okay, pull them. If they don't, be very careful, please, because you don't want to have to get in there with a strip thread extractor or something like that. That would be a pain. If they're old and shitty, just order a new set. And with something like this, the screws that come out of there, dealers are gonna say, "Oh, you gotta buy it from Honda, and you're gonna go and wait week in the mail." No, just take those screws down, go to your local hardware store, find the right size threads, make sure it's identical screw or bolt or whatever. Just get the same one, slap new ones in there. For that, it's like you don't really have to rely on the quality of it. For other pieces in the bike, I'm gonna say, you're taking a risk with certain areas. But for something like that, just 2 screws that are holding a housing together, no, just go down to the hardware store and get a new set. So if those screws are getting stuck in there, grab an adjustable, well, not adjustable, but a screwdriver that has interchangeable bits. And try to find a Phillips. Oh, that's not Phillips. If I can find a set here. Try to find one with a wider head. Hit it with a penetrating oil first. And put a wider blade screwdriver in. And as you start turning, grab a small plastic hammer or something and just start tapping on the back of the screwdriver. Kind of like you're going to do with an impact that will give it enough oomph to get out. You could use an impact, but most likely it's too much of an impact and then it'll just strip it right out before you even know it happened. So we're going to do that because I know they're going to be in there really tight and kind of easy to strip. Yeah, so that's frustrating. Before I even got in there, went and put in the screwdriver. One of them was already pre-stripped out. Somebody just reefed it in there, stripped it right out, didn't replace it. So if we can get one off loose enough, we might be able to get the other out. Otherwise, we're going to have to go to a thread extractor and try to get that out of there, and then we're going to spend all day on this stupid thing. And then have to go down to the hardware store anyways. So, let's see what we can do here. So, it's getting hot out. I'm getting frustrated. Neither of those are coming out. So, at least the one that's stripped out. I'm going to go with some thread extractors. Just drill into the friggin' thing. Throw a thread extractor in there and just try to pull it out that way. Hopefully it will work, and hopefully it doesn't shear it off and get caught inside the housing or something, and then I have to buy a new friggin' housing. So, yeah, hopefully you won't have this happen, but we are going to have to go buy new screws after. So, note that this can happen to you. It's not unheard of. Somebody doesn't take care of their bike and they let it sit. This happens quite often. So hopefully this will help. Right, so I wasn't really able to get one of the thread extractors in there. So all I actually did to one of these was drill it out part of the way. And I kind of was able to get a screwdriver, a very small one, to beat it in with a hammer. But what I actually ended up doing was I was able to slide, once it got loose enough, just from hitting on it, to slide it up and off the bar almost. And then I was able to hold this with the screws facing up, so I wasn't, trying to do this upside down like before. And get a screwdriver in there and just beat on it with a hammer until it turned. And same thing with the other one, I was able to start turning that one when I was able to put the pressure downwards rather than trying to do it up into the air. So we will have to go buy new ones of these at the store, and note that these are different lengths. It's 2 different lengths. They should both be the same size threads though. So you need the correct lengths. And that might be why this wasn't lining up before. It might have been the length, I don't know. But I'm pretty sure one of these is... Yeah, I'm pretty sure this one here is supposed to be longer than this one here as it goes in. We will check just to make sure. Now that we got this, you could see how this works. So all we have to do is disconnect these and remove the cables out of the housing, give this a good clean. So our switch is a little dirty. And then we will make sure the new cables are good and then measure them and put this bike back together. Right, so we got the new cables measured and the cables are all set. We also got new screws. Just went down to the hardware store. Brand new. You can get these in stainless too if you want, so they don't strip out as easy. So we got to get the throttle body back together, and we're gonna put the new cables in. So first step is gonna be to what is this interestingness? Well, somebody packed my handlebars with something, so time to clean that out. Looks like I had a bird's nest in my handlebar. Never seen that before. Anyways, throttle body. Gonna need to go back on. And the grip housing. Or the housing here. Gonna need to go back on as well. So, before we put this on, we're gonna thread the new cables in here. Pull the cables through and attach them to that. And then bolt this back down onto there. Make sure it's secure before we route the cables down below. So remember the correct which ones push and which ones pull, like you did before when you took them out. Alright, so we're putting these in now. If for some reason you can't remember, if you didn't watch, see how this sits? This is the top. So your piece with this long kind of metal adjuster here, that is going to be on the top, and of course it has a locking nut and the entire bar spins. On this one, the bar spins, but what actually threads in is this, and that's independent of this. It's not the threads aren't on this rod here, on the bottom piece. They're on the here. So that's which end is going to go which, and remember the top coming out of here is going to go to the bottom side on the carburetor, and the bottom here is going to go to the top side on the carburetor. So we'll route this and show you. So for right now, just as demonstration purposes, I'm just going to leave these kind of loose and we're going to adjust them after. Our cables are coming through here, so we're going to get these and attach them onto the throttle body now. Right, so when you know you have both of them connected, if you move the throttle body with this closed, you'll see each cable move both ways. So if you look in here as to how I place this, like this, your top cable is on the right hand side here, your bottom cable is on the left hand side, and this is just the left side of this is just going to sit down to the left side of this channel and then close. So this is how we're going to put it onto the handlebars like this now. I'll show you that. I also forgot to mention, before you put those in there, make sure you lubricate the ends of them and lubricate the ends of these. That way you can even send a little bit of oil down there. That'll help keep the cables lubricated. Keep them from seizing. Alright, so if you look in there, you can see cables move. See, the cable moves in and out. Make sure that does it on both ends. And before we go too far as to tightening the housing down and everything, we're going to route the cables and get them hooked up back onto the carburetor. A lot of other bikes are not going to be this easy, because instead of just clamping onto that bracket there and going onto the assembly, a lot of them are actually going to screw. The opposite end here will go into the carburetor, and you have to take a cover off the carburetor or something, or take the carburetor out. Not usually that case with a lot of bikes anymore, but some of them are like that. Just be aware. In case you forgot the routing, both cables, I got the top one in right now, but are going to go around, pass inside through the forks. From there, the cable is going to go around the radiator cap to the right hand side and then drop down and to the left. And then, if you can see here, it comes up behind the radiator. It's got to be inside the frame rail, and then drop down kind of where this hose is, and then drop down, and then come down to here. So once you get it down to here, don't put this onto the bracket yet. Hook in your cable, loop it around underneath, and then slide the threaded rod up and around back. Slide it into the hook, and then start to tighten down your cables. And right now we left them loose because I'm going to adjust them again, because I want mine adjusted properly because they weren't before. But if yours were adjusted fine before and you remember how they went, then you can put them back. good idea to take a picture of them first, and then this cable is just going to snake in the exact same way. You're going to have to kind of make it. As for up top here, when we tighten these up, these are kind of going to be like this. You want to make sure they're out of the way of your brake, of course. Alright, so remember which way. Remember, this cable was like a decompression cable, I believe. That sat up on the top bracket. And then of course this clamps in here. And that clamps in at the bottom. And we'll get those tightened up. You can see cables on there fine. I'm gonna have to adjust it, of course, because we got some slack. But the cables are all set for the most part. So now it's just getting everything back together. Alright, so now we're just taking it adjustable, tightening down this. That's nice and tight. The housing's tight. We'll take pliers and tighten down this now. Get that up and out of the way. And so they don't get stuck again. There's no need to reef on these. Just nice and gentle. Tighten them down. I also had to remove the these two cables for the brake light here, and I put those back on, and then we'll move the mirror back after that. Right, so up top, it's all set. Cables are routed. Cables are attached here. So now all I need is to really adjust these, and I'm gonna just adjust mine. So you're supposed to have at the throttle grip less than about 1/8 of an inch of slack, I believe, of wiggle room. So I'm gonna, I forgot to move these earlier. Now they're stuck on my cover. I'll have to fix that. Anyways, 1/8 of an inch. And that's about as much wiggle room as you want. So I'm almost there. I'm just going to adjust that. And then once you do that, I mean, it's pretty much putting the tank back on. And if you remember, there's the two tank bolts. There's the one up there, the one down there, putting your seat back on, re-adding the fuel line and your suction, or your breather hose, I should say, on the tank. And that's pretty much it, other than just testing it out. If you guys got any questions or comments, let me know. If you got a different bike and you're not exactly sure, let me know. But it's pretty easy to do. All right, thank you guys. Have a good day.